Hello everyone, thank you for coming back to the channel to continue following the emotional story of single mom Hoai and Hung. In the previous episodes, we witnessed Hung's inner struggle as he stood between career and love. But today, things have become clearer. He has resolutely taken off the police uniform, once a symbol of ideals and responsibilities that meant everything to him. In return, Hung wishes to begin a new journey, one that is closer, simpler, yet filled with challenges, building a small home with Hoai and venturing into the livelihood of trading. This decision is not only a sacrifice but also proof of the sincere love Hung has for Hoai. Because he understands that love sometimes does not need distant promises, but rather the presence each day, the companionship in every meal, in every ordinary morning and evening. For Hoai, after years of carrying everything on her own, she finally feels the warmth of a man's embrace, someone willing to face life's worries by her side. However, the story does not end there. In this episode, an unexpected event opens a new chapter for both of them. Hoai's foster mother, who has been absent for so many years, suddenly appears. That moment brings a flood of emotions, old memories, lingering sorrows, and the yearning for reunion that seemed long forgotten. This encounter could be a sudden happiness, but it might also be a new challenge that Hoai must face. So, will the return of her foster mother bring the warm light of family bonds, or will it stir up unresolved conflicts and heartache? And Hung, as the man striving to rebuild his life, how will he choose to protect the fragile peace that has just begun in their small family? Stay with me in today's episode to witness all these unexpected twists and discover the answers to those questions. After leaving the force, Hung fell into a long silence he had never experienced before. In those first days, he woke up very early, sitting for hours by the tea table, holding a job newspaper without knowing where to start. Sometimes old friends called to check in, some suggested he work as a security guard at a private company, others introduced him to an office job with a salary just enough for a modest life. But Hung knew too well, those jobs were like drops of water falling on a blazing fire, they could never extinguish the flames of debt weighing heavily on his shoulders. What haunted Hung the most was the house. It was not just bricks and mortar, but the place where he had once chosen each brick, each window frame with his own hands. Years of savings, sweat, and even sacrifices of personal joy had gone into building that home. Now, because of debts, it was beyond his reach. Each time he walked past the street leading to that old house, Hung's heart ached, as if every step pressed down on an unhealed wound. On long sleepless nights, Hung often stared at the ceiling. He thought about the future, about Hoai, the woman who had endured so much loss, and about his own unfinished dreams. Deep inside, Hung knew he could not let life remain stagnant. That was when the thought of trading arose. He had seen acquaintances rise in just a few years of business, gaining capital, paying off debts. Though he understood the marketplace was harsh and full of risks, at least business opened a path to breakthrough, something steady monthly wages could never offer. He envisioned mornings opening a shop, evenings poring over accounts. There would be exhaustion, there would be uncertainty, but at least it would be a path of choice, a path where he could decide his own fate. More importantly, it was the only way to gather enough money, clear his debts, and reclaim the house that had carried a part of his life. That decision became a hinge, closing the past and opening the future. Hung knew well that leaving the police meant giving up stability, giving up the image of a man who once represented discipline and order. But deep within, he realized, what mattered most now was not holding on to past glory, but building a new journey, a road, though rugged, where Hoai would walk beside him, sharing every step. And perhaps, it was this very choice to enter business that would become the greatest proof of his love and resilience, a man willing to shed the past in exchange for a peaceful home and a fulfilled future. After many nights of discussion with Hoai, Hung finally revealed all the thoughts he had been keeping inside. He told her that if his superiors did not approve his request for temporary leave, he would resolutely leave the force, officially closing the chapter of his life as a policeman. The decision was by no means easy, for he had devoted nearly all his youth to the profession, but now Hung thought only of how to quickly revive their finances, pay off debts, and reclaim the house they had lost. He shared with Hoai his new plan, to gather what little capital remained, then find ways to borrow more in order to invest in buying fruit gardens, transporting the produce to other provinces to sell, and making profit from price differences. Hung believed that with diligence, a willingness to learn, and careful calculation, he could gradually build a stable source of income. He explained that he would carefully consider seasonal fruits, choosing items that were easy to sell and had a quick turnover to avoid surplus stock. In Hung's eyes, though this path was arduous, it was the most practical way out of their situation. Hearing him, Hoai fell silent. She knew how harsh the journey had been for Hung to become a police officer. It demanded not only willpower and perseverance, but also loyalty and sacrifice. For years, Hung had dedicated his youth to the profession, earning the trust of his comrades and the respect of the people. Yet now, he was ready to give it all up, just to be by her side and to build a new home together. The thought pierced her heart with both pain and guilt. Looking straight into Hung's eyes, Hoai's voice trembled. She told him that countless people out there dreamed of wearing the police uniform, cherishing it as a lifelong honor. And yet Hung, for her sake, was prepared to let it all go. Hoai urged him to think carefully, not to rush into a decision in a moment of despair. She feared that one day, when today's hardships had passed, Hung would look back and regret giving up a career that so many could only dream of. In that moment, the air in the room grew heavy. On one side was the longing to change their lives through trade, on the other, the deep regret of abandoning a hard-won career. Both Hung and Hoai found themselves caught in the whirlwind of heavy thoughts. And thus, their story reached a critical crossroads, forcing them to face a choice between a glorious past and an uncertain future. In the face of Hoai's heartfelt pleas, Hung did not get angry or argue. He quietly listened, fully understanding the worries weighing on her heart. His gaze softened, and his voice, though calm, carried a firm resolve. Hung explained that he never intended to erase years of effort in a single moment, nor did he want Hoai to feel guilty, believing she was the reason he gave up his career. But the reality before him was undeniable: the mounting debts, the house that needed to be redeemed, and above all, the yearning to be with her. All of it pushed him to seek a new path. He confessed that the idea of transferring to a faraway post was something he could never accept. Such a choice would mean leaving behind the place he was rooted in, leaving Hoai, and abandoning everything he wanted to build. "If I must choose," Hung said, "I would rather set aside my work as a policeman than be separated from you and live a life without love." Hearing this, Hoai's heart swelled with both emotion and pain. She knew his words came from the deepest sincerity, yet she kept urging him to reconsider, not to hastily trade away a career that so many out there dream of. In her eyes, Hung was not just an ordinary man but a symbol of resilience and responsibility. She feared that one day, when their financial storms had passed, he would look back and regret the impulsive decision made today. Seeing Hoai still clouded with worry, Hung gently held her hand. His palms were rough yet warm, as if passing on his unwavering strength to her. He softly reassured her, "Trust me. I will not act recklessly. I've thought long and hard, and I believe I'll find the right path. Whether I continue or give it up, I'll do whatever it takes to protect you and the home we are trying to build together." In that moment, Hoai could no longer hold back her tears. A deep compassion surged within her. She realized that before her stood a man who had borne immense pressure, yet still strove to remain steadfast to shield her. And it was at that very moment that their bond of trust grew even stronger, even as countless unknown challenges awaited them ahead. That day, after carefully discussing and deciding to pursue the path of trading, Hung went into the nearby orchards to survey the land. The midday sun shone down on the rows of trees, with clusters of green fruit peeking out from the thick foliage, filling him with a mix of excitement and nervousness. He wasn't just strolling for curiosity's sake, he carried with him a clear goal: to identify the crops with the greatest potential for quick profit. Eventually, Hung stopped at a large pomelo orchard. The owner welcomed him warmly and shared that this year had been a poor harvest, with many orchards unable to produce as they usually did. That meant supply would be scarce, while demand remained steady, perhaps even higher towards the year's end. Hearing this, a thought immediately flashed through Hung's mind: if he secured the supply early, the opportunity for profit would be much greater. Without hesitation, Hung decided to place a deposit to reserve the entire orchard. He made his conditions clear: while waiting for the fruit to ripen, the orchard owner had to carefully guard the crop, preventing theft. This way, Hung could be assured of both the quantity and the quality of the goods for his upcoming shipments. The orchard owner nodded in agreement, even promising to keep his word, as he too hoped for a lasting business relationship. On his way back, Hung didn't stop there. He continued exploring other orchards in the region: longan, guava, even some lemon groves. He meticulously noted prices, harvest seasons, and compared which fruits were easier to sell and which could yield quicker profits. In his mind, it was no longer just a trading plan, but a bigger dream: to turn the produce of his homeland into branded goods, widely promoted in other regions, perhaps even beyond the province. With every step on the red dirt roads, as he looked at the lush orchards stretching across the land, Hung felt his determination grow stronger. He wasn't only thinking of paying debts and reclaiming the house, but also nurturing a broader vision. One day, when people mentioned the pomelo, longan, or guava from his hometown, they wouldn't just think of ordinary fruit, but of specialties with a recognized name. And on that journey, he would be the one to begin, proving that even after leaving behind the police uniform, he could still rewrite his life with his own hands and unwavering resolve. Since the day Hung officially moved in, Hoai's life has completely changed. The mornings that used to be filled with rush and a child's cries have now become gentler and warmer. In the past, whenever Tony cried before dawn, Hoai would hurry to soothe him, prepare milk, get clothes ready, sometimes so rushed that she skipped breakfast just to take her son to school. But now, the first image she sees when opening her eyes is no longer chaos and exhaustion, but Hung, the quiet yet responsible man, gently pulling up her blanket, wiping away a bead of sweat on her forehead as if afraid she would wake up from even the smallest movement. Hung, used to a disciplined lifestyle from his police days, still kept the habit of rising early. As the first rays of sunlight stretched across the horizon, he would step into the yard, carefully sweeping every corner, the soft sound of the broom bristles on the ground adding to the morning calm. Afterwards, he would head into the kitchen, wash the dishes left from the night before, then carry a basket to the market. The vendors there were already familiar with him, the tall, lean man with a calm voice, who always chose vegetables, pomelos, or oranges with great care for his little family. By the time Hoai and Tony woke up, the dining table would already be neatly set, with steaming bowls of pho, crispy baguettes, or sometimes just sticky rice and warm milk. Each time she saw that scene, Hoai was moved to silence. She never imagined that after so many years of carrying everything alone, a day would come when she was cherished and cared for like this. Tony, a child who had always lacked a father's love, saw Hung's presence as something magical. He first called him Uncle Hung, but soon switched to calling him Dad in his innocent little voice, making Hoai's tears fall. Whenever Hung lifted Tony high in the air, the boy's laughter echoed through the small house and into the garden beyond. Hung didn't just play with him, he patiently taught Tony how to stack wooden blocks into little houses, and read comic books until the boy dozed off. In Tony's eyes, Hung was the father he had always wished for, and in Hoai's eyes, he was a model husband, both strong and tender. In the evenings, after a busy day, the three would gather in their small room. Tony lay in the middle, chattering about school and his friends. Hung and Hoai listened, often laughing at his innocent remarks. The warm glow of the bedside lamp spread across the room, creating an atmosphere so tender that Hoai often wondered, was this a dream? She had never dared to believe she would one day have such a complete and loving home. To Hoai, Hung wasn't just a man who stepped in to fill a void, but living proof that happiness can still arrive, even after the darkest days. He brought her peace, companionship, and a bright future she had never dared to imagine. Above all, Hung transformed their small house into a true home, one filled with love, care, and the joyful laughter of a child each and every day. It wasn't only Hung, Hoai also poured all her effort into supporting their shared life. Ever since Hung left his police job, the family's finances had become a heavy burden. Yet instead of feeling bitter or complaining, Hoai grew even more determined. She focused on the fruit trade, carefully picking the best produce to bring to market. Every morning, she rose at dawn, balancing baskets on her shoulders, heading to the market with a gentle smile, undeterred by scorching sun or sudden rain. At first, many were surprised that a woman who had endured so many hardships could now show such strength. But Hoai knew well, only by carrying the load together with Hung could they overcome the trials ahead. She didn't want him to struggle alone, nor did she want him drowning in guilt for leaving the police force without yet finding a new path. When the market closed, Hoai returned home with sun-darkened hands smelling of fruit, yet her eyes gleamed with hope. Seeing her so hardworking, Hung felt both love and pride. Time and again, he told her that as long as she trusted and stood by him, he would have the strength to rebuild their future. Whenever they sat together, counting their small profits and dreaming of buying more pomelo or longan orchards, their little room was filled with the warmth of trust and unity. Life was no longer as comfortable as before, but in every simple meal, they still exchanged smiles. Tony chattered happily beside them, his laughter filling the small house and making all fatigue dissolve. To Hoai, the most precious thing was simply having Hung by her side, sharing the weight of life. To Hung, that simple happiness was the driving force that kept him moving forward, no matter how tough the road ahead. And so, though the path was still full of challenges, both of them felt peace in their hearts, because they knew they had already found what mattered most, a small family, a true home built on love, trust, and shared devotion. That day, after finishing at the market, Hoai carried her basket slowly along the familiar road leading home. Her face still showed traces of fatigue from the busy morning, yet inside she felt lighthearted because she had managed to sell quite a lot of fruit. Unexpectedly, right at the turn before the small alley, she caught sight of a familiar figure. It was her foster mother, the woman who had once sheltered and cared for her during the hardest days of her life. For a moment, the two froze in place. Then the foster mother hurried forward, embracing Hoai tightly with tearful eyes. Her voice trembled with emotion, "Ca, I've finally found you again." In that warm embrace, Hoai stood stunned, her eyes brimming with tears, never imagining she would meet her again in such an ordinary, humble moment. The foster mother was overwhelmed with joy, for it had been so long since they had kept regular contact. Since the day Hoai faced her hardships, drifted away, and only much later returned safely, she had only heard from Hung that Hoai was alright. But not seeing her with her own eyes, not hearing her voice, had weighed heavily on her heart, often stealing her sleep. Now, seeing Hoai in the flesh, healthy and standing before her, finally lifted that burden. The two sat beneath a tree by the roadside, tuning out the noise of the market as they spoke. Hoai shared about her recent struggles, long days selling fruit, caring for her child, enduring whispers and judgment from others. The foster mother listened intently, her rough hands holding tightly onto Hoai's, as if to absorb some of her burdens. Choked with emotion, she admitted that all this time, she had been quietly following news of her, silently praying that Hoai would make it through. Their conversation stretched on, not just polite greetings but a deep exchange between two souls bound by a rare motherly love. Every word, every glance carried affection, longing, and sorrow. The more she listened, the more the foster mother's heart ached for Hoai. She expressed her hope that now, with Hung's mother gone, Hoai could live more peacefully, without fear. She prayed that Hung, with his sense of duty and strength, would be the steady anchor for Hoai, helping her find the simple happiness she so deserved. Before parting, the foster mother clasped Hoai's hands tightly once more, reminding her, "No matter what happens, remember that you still have me, you still have a family to lean on." The words left Hoai speechless, her eyes shimmering with tears. In that moment, she felt the unconditional love so vividly, like an invisible thread binding their hearts, two women connected by time, hardship, and a bond that would never fade. That morning, as the first sunlight streamed through the window, Hung's phone suddenly rang. On the other end was the stern voice of his superior, ordering him to appear at the office that very day to settle the request for temporary leave he had previously submitted. The short call carried a heavy weight, signaling a meeting that would determine his future. Driving to the office, Hung's mind swirled with thoughts. On one side was his yearning for leave, to spend time with his family, to search for new opportunities, to reclaim the lost house, and to remain by Hoai's side. On the other side was his duty, the ideals he had devoted so many years to as a police officer. If his request was approved, he could finally breathe easier, gaining time to plan. But if denied, he would face a harsh choice, accept a transfer far away, or end the career he had once considered his very lifeblood. Stepping into headquarters, the once familiar surroundings suddenly felt distant. Every wall, every corridor carried memories of struggle and camaraderie. Sitting before his superior's desk, Hung felt the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on him. His superior fixed him with a gaze that was both stern and tinged with understanding. "Hung," the superior began, "we've received your request for temporary leave. Today, I want to hear directly from you. Why did you make this decision, and have you truly thought it through? You know well that if you refuse the transfer, it will mean leaving the force." The words struck like a warning bell. Hung drew in a deep breath, steadying his voice. He explained everything, from the crushing debt, to his desire to reclaim the family home, to the reason he could not leave this land, where Hoai and Tony needed him. Every word carried both regret and determination, the resolve of a man prepared to lose everything as long as he could protect what mattered most. The room fell silent for a few seconds. It was a tense moment, where the line between temporary leave and permanent resignation had never been thinner. Hung understood clearly, a single decision today could alter the course of his entire life. So then, where will everything lead? Will the path Hung has chosen truly bring him the new life he has long wished for? Will his superiors grant his request, allowing him to take temporary leave to care for his family, with a chance to return later and continue serving in the land he has devoted himself to? Or will every door close, forcing Hung to decisively abandon the police uniform he has worn and sacrificed for all these years? If that scenario comes to pass, Hung will become a completely different man, not a police officer anymore, but an ordinary man, struggling in trade, working in markets and orchards. A life full of hardships, but in return, he would gain the one thing he desires most, peace by Hoai and Tony's side, a small family simple yet filled with love. These choices, these crossroads, each path carries sacrifice, loss, and hope. Will Hung be given the chance to begin again, or will he step out of the force on his own, to write the next chapter of his life? All the answers still lie ahead. Stay tuned for the next episodes to see which direction Hung's life will turn, and whether he can find true happiness for himself and his little family with Hoai.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Thì thời gian qua có một số công việc nên là mình lên video về Lý Hoài Ca và cảnh sát Hùng không có đều, thì hôm nay mình mới hoàn thành xong một video tiếp theo về câu chuyện tình yêu của mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoài Ca và cảnh sát Hùng cho mọi người. Thì hiện tại thì cảnh sát Hùng và Lý Hoài Ca đã đang ở chung với nhau rồi, tuy nhiên thì cuộc sống của họ còn rất là nhiều khó khăn khi liên quan về kinh tế, khi Hùng phải đứng ra trả khoản nợ khổng lồ của mẹ mình, cũng như là công việc của anh không ổn định khi anh đã quyết định từ bỏ công việc cảnh sát để ở nhà buôn bán với Hoài Ca. Tuy nhiên Hoài Ca thì đang rất là tiếc nuối cho công việc của anh, tại vì để trở thành một người cảnh sát thì không dễ. Bây giờ Hùng lại chấp nhận từ bỏ công việc ấy để có thể ở cạnh cô, ở gần cô để chăm sóc cho cô. Thì liệu Hùng sẽ quyết định như thế nào trong quãng thời gian tiếp theo, và cuộc sống của hai người khi trở về với nhau liệu còn êm đềm hạnh phúc hay không, thì mời mọi người đón xem ở tập tiếp theo nha.